looking forward to the show. When is the show going to air at Radio City? When does it start, the New Year's?
The show will open on January 30th and run until February the 9th.
Great. Okay, I'm looking forward to it. It's really a great presentation. And talking to this program, welcome very, very much to Conversations. And to you in the audience, welcome very much to Conversations. A pleasure to welcome to the program two ladies of the Chinese background, and they're involved with a couple of entities. One is a significant telecommunications entity in the world scene, I would say. And it's some people may be aware, some of the programming here appears here on MNN. It's the new Tung Dynasty television. It's a major television vehicle in the world now that's developing at a very fast pace. We're going to be talking some about that. And they're also both very involved with a Chinese New Year holiday celebration that is going to be coming to Radio City Music Hall. I'm here to say it's just a fantastic performance. I am very impressed with it all. We're going to be talking about these matters. Both welcome very much. And if I may, on my far left is Shirley Dai, and she's a dancer, and she's the host of a Renaissance performing art troupe, and she's going to be involved presumably in the festival. And on my immediate left is Lei Xi, and she's a producer of New Tung Dynasty television. Ladies, welcome very, very much to Conversation.
Thank you for having us.
That's my great good pleasure and everything. We've talked with a number of your colleagues over the years, and I wonder maybe you could share. We've got a roll-in we're going to show of the holiday celebration that will be very impressive to everyone. But let's talk a little bit. We got 58 minutes, so you talk a little bit about. Maybe you could share a little of your background, and perhaps your background could a little bit to set the tone in a human tone here. But where were you born and raised? A little bit of that sort of thing, and then we'll get into talk about New Tung and the festival. But could you share your own background, please?
I was born in Shanghai, China, during the Cultural Revolution.
During the Cultural?
Yes, and my mother had to escape the search of the Red Guard to go to her mother's town to give birth to me. So I was born right during the time frame. There was a tremendous tumult in China.
What was that? Could you share with me a little? What was that about? Were they intellectuals, or what was it that they would have been targeted by that?
My parents both are college professors.
I see. Okay.
And my mother's father is a professor, and he was educated in the United States in the 20s. So he was categorized as one of those people who have connections to the West, and he was terribly persecuted during the Cultural Revolution.
For having that connection?
For being educated in the West.
Being educated in the West, the realm of the imperialists?
During the 1920s, during the nationalists.
And that was something that was very grim in a certain sense for intellectuals, and I understand it was very, very trying.
It was, well, the 60s in China was a very difficult time, and I was born during that time. And in the late 80s, my parents were determined to send me to the United States, to leave China. So I came in the mid-80s to go to college here.
Where'd you go?
I went to Wellesley College.
Wellesley, oh, that's a pretty good school. Yeah. And what did you study?
I majored in architecture.
Okay.
And I had always had an interest in theatrical production, and so I was very fortunate to have an opportunity with New Tung Dynasty TV a few years ago. And the TV and theatrical production has always been my passion.
Well, you're at a perfect spot, it seems to me, if I may say so. New Tung is really dry, and it's pronounced, it's spelled Tang, but it's pronounced Tung.
New Tung Dynasty is how we would say it.
Yeah, and I understand it was, you got a 5,000-year cultural history in China, which is, too many people feel that's overlooked in terms of looking at things in a modern way. But that's an incredible culture, and that the Tung Dynasty was perhaps a highlight or a golden moment in the history of culturally of the Chinese civilization.
Yes, the Tang Dynasty was considered the most flourishing era in the Chinese history. Philosophy, you know, it was just a very open, diverse, and flourishing era. You know, ideas from different areas were, you know, was present in China. It was a great time of intellect and beauty and arts.
Yeah. Well, it sure shows in the show. I can tell you that you put on a Radio City Musical. I'm here to testify that that is the case. And we'll come back. And how about you, dear? Would you share your background?
Of course.
Yeah.
I was actually born in Beijing, China, the capital
Beijing,
of China, and I came here when I was 9 years old. So oftentimes when people ask me, what's your hometown? Well, I go, I have two hometowns. One's in China, one's on the west coast in California. So
San Francisco?
Near San Francisco,
Yeah,
Oakland,
okay.
just across the bridge.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so I grew up here. I spent most of my life actually here in the States. So it's kind of difficult for me sometimes to relate to the Chinese culture since I grew up here and I had to learn English and try to fit in with the society here. I slowly was forgetting where I came from.
Yeah, that can happen, but still, it's there, isn't it? The
of course, it's there. And now I'm working with this great show. And it's just grabbing me back.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I'm a friend with Vita Lee. I think she's a member that helps put together. And you're a dancer.
Right.
And you're a professional. I mean, you studied dance and so forth. Maybe you could just briefly. What do we look for with Chinese dance? There's classical dancing. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the cultural expression dance from a specifically Chinese background or aspect.
Well, for Chinese classical dance, for many people, it's a big wonder to them because they don't really see it that much here in the West, and also in China too these days. I don't think they particularly, not that many people know about classical Chinese dance. Classical Chinese dance is actually very interesting because it comes from the inside, and however a dancer moves, you have to learn how to breathe from the inside and show your emotion expression from the inside. So when you see it on the outside, you really get a feeling of what the dancer is trying to express because it's coming from within. And I think Chinese classical dance is one of the most comprehensive dances in the world, just because we have to go through ballet basic training and then also tumbling techniques, kind of like gymnastics. And we also, of course, take classical Chinese dance lessons as well. So
you put on it's a magnificent presentation, choreographically and everything that we're going to be showing an example of and that sort of thing. That's really interesting. We have a dance here. We have Miss Graham and we had John Cage. And we had dance is a very expressive art form and so forth. When we think of things culturally, we think in terms of Rudyard Kipling said, "The East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall meet." I guess in a certain sense, the 5,000-year-old cultural tradition of China is of the East. I think Lao Tzu. I think Confucian. I think the dynasties and so forth. And so in various things like medicine is different. There are a lot of differences. Is the dance different? You say it comes from inside. It makes me think Stanislavski, or thinking in terms of theater, the method, and that sort of thing. Are the movements and the disciplines similar in both cases, or are there differences between them that you can recognize?
Between the West and the East?
Between the West and the East in terms of this art form dance.
Well, China has more than 56 ethnic minorities, and between every single different ethnic minority, they have their own style of dance.
Really? Okay.
So I wouldn't think that it's something you would be able to see out here, just because China has such a long history and because there's so many different ethnic groups and different types of dance. I mean, of course, I think that there's maybe some movements that you'll be able to see in ballet as well. But I don't know. I think there's quite a big of a difference between the two.
Yeah, if I may
add,
add to it, I think Western ballet puts the emphasis on postures, positions, the very specific postures, positions in the ballet language of dance. However, in the Chinese classical dance, the emphasis is put on the inner feelings, the message, the inner spirit of the move. So two dancers could be doing the same move, but they're expressing totally different feelings.
Really?
And because the emphasis is on the inside. So classical Chinese dance, another analogy could be between the art, the painting of the Western painting and the Chinese painting. Western painting puts the emphasis on composition, frame, details, whereas Chinese painting is on the is on the meaning, the overall meaning, message it tries to deliver.
Yeah, some of those things, misty mountains and things, beautiful things you can think, or calligraphy itself, which is so beautiful.
Exactly.
I mean, it's an art form.
It leaves a lot of room for imagination. It tries not to fill the entire picture
Right.
or a paper. It leaves you room for imagination, and that's where the inner meaning comes
I
from.
think it reflects a difference in philosophical view of our role in universe or human nature or something. You think it's a difference in the...
It's hard to
China.
say.
Yeah.
I think this is, this is developed over 5,000 years.
5,000? We're 200 years old, this country. That's all we are. I mean, it's just nothing compared to 5,000 years. Yeah, right.
I once asked one of our choreographers, I said, do you find it challenging having to produce a new production year after year? And to my surprise, his answer was no. He said, we have so many dynasties to go back. We have so many myth and legends to draw upon, and then Chinese dance is so expressive. The language that we could use to express any feelings or any characters is endless. So he said, give me anything, and I could turn it into a dance. He said, and he used the analogy of chopsticks. He said, if you give me chopsticks, I could choreograph a dance around chopsticks.
You could make like a stick figure.
And guess
With
what?
chopsticks, you could have, yeah, go ahead.
And I was told that this year, we're more than likely to going to see a dance, using chopsticks
in
as,
the big
as props.
festival.
Yes, in the upcoming production.
Well, that's creative, right?
It is.
And it goes way back, and it's rich. We should keep track of that because people tend to look at things in the surface. And it seems to me that you were talking about Cultural Revolution and difficulties and so forth. And New Tung Dynasty Television, and if you don't mind me, a sister institution, the Epoch Times, which is a very expanding newspaper now, around the world, all over the world, they both have a certain kind of view of things, and they think that the rich cultural tradition of China should be brought more to the fore, not only in the world, but also perhaps in China, in perhaps contradistinction to some of the strictures that are put upon things by the way things are organized now. Is that not correct?
Well,
in a way, I don't want to stress the point, but you know what I'm saying.
a lot of the traditional Chinese cultural heritage was lost during the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah, cultural revolution.
I grew up in China, but I didn't really understand what Chinese dance was or is until I get involved in this production. I used to think that there's nothing to be seen in a classical Chinese performance, but all of that was wrong. All of that was the result of years of living in a cultural drought. There was the
cultural drought.
The Cultural Revolution basically, labeled anything that's traditional poisonous. So all of these were taken away. Yes.
To a raison d'etre for the culture, which was based around Karl Marx. Did you have to study Karl Marx in school and so forth, and the communist view of things, and Mao and so forth? And were you in a transition period in that, or where did all that go, or where is it going? I saw Mr. Hu on television the other day, and he was talking to the Chinese, it was on C-SPAN, and he said, we represent socialism and the great communist thing to bring justice to all the people, and we're representing the forces against the imperialism and so forth. And you were raised in that context where it became almost like a religion, the political context by which the Communist Party organized things? Or is that something maybe you're not aware of or not? But it's interesting to try and understand. It looks awfully like a capitalist system to me when I look at it currently.
Well, China is in a very, I think it is in a very different time now. But I think the saddest thing to see is all the cultural heritage and traditions has been lost over the 50 years, past 50 years.
Why would they want to stamp that out? It's so rich. If you can conjecture. I don't know. Why would they not want to stress the Chinese cultural tradition, which is so rich and so beautiful?
Because communism, China is still
the
communist.
New ideology.
Communism is not a Chinese, is a Western.
That's
came
right,
from
it
the
came
West.
from Germany.
Right, and it's not, it's not a Chinese. It didn't come from China.
Yeah.
And communism is about mind manipulation, control, and then they, in principle, it's not in line with the very values and virtues that the Chinese culture was built upon. So they're not in sync with each other. So that's my personal understanding.
Yeah, it's your so it'd be a personal thing, but there's a lot of people who feel that way. Apparently, somebody said they had something like 80,000 demonstrations, serious demonstrations against human rights abuses in China.
Well, what I can say is because...
I mean, over the last year or something. I mean, they're all over the place, apparently.
Yeah, we believe that what we're trying to do is bring people together, during the holidays, during one of the most important holidays in Asia, and trying to present this authentic, original production. People may have different political views, have different backgrounds, but what brings people together is the same cultural roots, through singing, dancing, and music performances. That's where people can share their value and their heritage together.
Yeah, right. Well, you sure do that. That's a wonderful show, and it's celebrating the New Year. I guess the New Year's coming now, the Chinese New Year. What is this year upcoming? Is this the year of the rat now?
It is the year of the rat.
Right, okay. So pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
And we're coming out of the year of the pig?
Yes, we are.
How did it get to be called rat and pig and so forth? Do you happen to know? It's just an offshot where, the Chinese. Why did they associate it with the animal?
Well, I heard a legend.
A legend.
Of course,
legends
a legend.
That we're taking account of.
Right,
I think,
one of the gods was saying, okay, we're going to have a lunar calendar now, so all the animals line up, and the first 12 that gets to the end of the line becomes the 12 new lunar animals of the Lunar New Year.
That's how it came about,
so it goes, the list is, I have it memorized in Chinese, but for me to translate into English, it's like, 鼠牛虎兔龙蛇马羊猴鸡狗猪. So it's rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, sheep, dog.
Get it?
Pig?
Pig.
Yeah.
Pig.
Pig.
Okay, that's it. I think you got it. Congratulations, you got it. Well done, well done. And that was it. That was the legend and everything. Well, anyway, it's Happy New Year coming up soon. It's lunar, I guess, or something, right?
It is.
Anyway, there's so many things you could talk about. And the person I said John Cage, I was thinking of Merce Cunningham in terms of the American dance tradition and so forth. There was a legendary Martha Graham who danced and that kind of stuff and everything. It's really good. And you have this great show that goes on, and you're going to present it. I'm so glad you're here in the United States of America, adding to our culture and so forth. And architecture, I always think it's the queen of the arts. It's probably more than all the arts, it affects the the environment as architecture in a very real sense.
You know what's interesting? Yes. For our show, we have great backdrops.
You sure do.
And especially for Radio City, it has, as far as I know, has the largest LCD screen in the world.
It's beautiful.
So once you project our background onto the the screen, we have ancient buildings and temples, and you'll be able to see that during the show. So
good. I look forward to it. I saw it last year, and it was just staggeringly beautiful. It was really, really good. And maybe since we're talking about it, and you're both you're involved with that, we have a little clip, I guess, that they seem to have been able to get up now that shows what? Maybe you could set it up, as they say.
It's a 4-minute introduction on the show. I'll give you a little bit of history of the show, and also show you clips of the show. And also you will see some audience feedback.
And some audience feedback. Okay, so if we can set that up in the booth, please, now then, and run it. And we're talking now again with Shirley Dai and with Lei Xi. Lei Xi?
Lei Xi.
Lei Xi. Lei Xi. What a beautiful name. I said it really is beautiful. It's like poetic. And run that now then, please.
One step closer to divine beauty. New Tung Dynasty Television presents the Chinese New Year Spectacular. This is a show that will transport you into an incredible ancient land, the land of the true China. Chinese classical dance, costumes inspired by ancient Chinese scrolls, and music that blends technique from the West with melodies from the East.
It just took me away to another universe. Really, really lovely.
I was very impressed. It was colorful, it was beautiful.
Orchestra was fabulous.
I was enchanted by every moment of it.
NTD TV's Chinese New Year Spectacular burst onto the scene in 2004 with 7 shows in 5 cities. Each year, the show has grown in scale and popularity. In 2008, the Spectacular will have over 100 shows in more than 40 cities, making it the largest Lunar New Year celebration in the world.
We want to present the best of 5,000 years of Chinese history can provide to the Western and Asian audience.
Each of our dance and music performance conveys a simple message and character. It's simplistic, expressive, and people find it very powerful.
It's a show that not only entertains, but it inspires you to learn and open your eyes.
I know more about Chinese culture as a result.
China was once called the land of divine. In ancient China, every part of society, from emperors to scholars to farmers, lived in harmony with heaven. And in turn, heaven bestowed upon China the gifts of its culture, philosophy, its painting, its music, and dance. Sadly, since the 1950s, and especially during the Cultural Revolution, much of this divine culture has been lost under communist rule. Today, a revival of these lost traditions has begun, and New Tung Dynasty Television is guiding the way. Its annual Chinese New Year Spectacular is leading the renaissance of a true Chinese culture to bring back the arts and values that made China a divine land.
I think it's just so important that people get a sense of Chinese history from something other than the Communist Party lens and propaganda.
Donc ça c'est très intéressant et c'est aussi très émouvant parce qu'il y a une dimension spirituelle qui s'est perdue en Chine actuellement.
向こうがなんかもう政治宣伝でただ叫んでるだけの劇だとしたら、こっちは心を柔らかくするような、なんていうの、人間の魂がこう入ってるような劇だったと思いますけど。
In 2006, NTD TV introduced The Holiday Wonders, a festive show featuring some of the best of Western and Eastern music and tradition on the same stage to celebrate the holiday season.
Their incredible spectacular has become the #1 way for New York families to celebrate the new year.
The show is not made in China, but it will fulfill your Chinese dream.
None of this would have been possible without the dedication of hundreds of artists, sponsors, and thousands of volunteers. We look forward to working with you to make the 2008 Spectacular the grandest and most enjoyable yet. A new year, a new beginning. NTD TV's Chinese New Year Spectacular.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's just beautiful. It's more beautiful on the stage when you see it. It's really impressive. I congratulate everybody involved in putting it on because it's a major event. Radio City Music Hall is a real venue, isn't it? It's huge. I didn't realize how big it is.
It is a lot of work to put this together.
Yeah, I bet it is, yeah.
A lot of research was done to make sure the authenticity of the costumes, the backdrop, you know, the props used. So a lot of effort was put into that.
And it's very much a collaborative effort. There's a great number of people involved.
It is.
And every time I say, who's the chief choreographer or something, they say, we all do it together. You're very democratically organized.
It is because it's such a huge production. It's almost impossible to have one person take it over. So there's a team of people dedicated working on the artistic side.
Yeah, but when you're dealing with artists, you often have ego problems. You know, prima ballerina is the prima ballerina, and you know that you don't have that problem. Everybody gets along fine with no problems, and the costume designer doesn't sometimes conflict about how high the hem should be with somebody else, or none of those things. None of those artistic arguments come into play. It's just sweet, listen, light all the time, right?
Sometimes they do have sometimes they do have different opinions, but
yeah,
I think when you try to do something, we try to achieve the common goal. You know, you have to put the big.
But you're dealing with world-class artists, and there's often a problem there. Maybe I can do a little sidebar. I just watched a movie the other day. It happened to come on the television. There's so many things called Topsy Turvy, and it was a movie that in Broadbent. John, what's his name? Broadbent. Great character actor, just a great character. And it was a period piece about the Gilbert and Sullivan. The Gilbert, I'm not sure if you're familiar. Gilbert and Sullivan was an English music hall team that did songs, you know, the Mikado and all that sort of thing. And it was acted out, and it was about coming to the Mikado. When they came to the Mikado, they'd run into a sort of, they'd been famous, and they came into a sour, and then there was all the clash between the lyricist and the music. And the ones that my music is better than your lyrics, and your lyrics are better. And then when they were doing the costume designer would not change one tilt of the costume, even though the actor wanted to have the hem up higher, all those kind of things. It was really funny. I'll bet there's a little of that goes on.
Sometimes you need that, you know, you need that process to ensure a top quality show because everybody's idea, you know, needs to be heard.
Yeah.
And you need to have them fight a little bit so
Yeah.
that the end product is world class.
If they don't, I would be very, very, very surprised if there wasn't a little of that went on. But it's a magnificent show, and you work together very well, and I congratulate you very much. And everybody is recommended to see it. It's going to be starting on the 30th, right, of January, and to the 8th?
To the 9th of February.
To the 9th of February, and at Radio City. And don't you also sometimes travel with that show, or they put it on in other venues and so forth? Or maybe you could talk a little bit about that, either one of you that wants to. Aren't you the host of something?
I'm a host of the Renaissance Performing Arts Troup, and we're actually based in New York, so we do a lot of local shows.
Based in New York City?
Based in New York City, and we do a lot of shows around the New York area.
Okay.
But the Divine Performing Arts Troup, there's actually 2 troupes that's going to be touring all over the world. I don't know the exact number. Maybe Lei can help me on this, but
it will be confirmed cities is 66 so far.
Wait a minute. You're going to perform in 66 cities?
Yes, around the world.
What are you talking? Spell that out. That's a huge thing.
It is huge.
That makes Eisenhower's D-Day look easy.
We more than doubled our performances since last year. Yes,
really?
Yes.
It's growing by leaps and bounds.
Yes. The demand for true, authentic Chinese culture, performance is there. You know, people want to see this kind of show.
Why would they want? Okay, is the demand for genuine cultural fare there?
It is
in the world today. I don't see our opera houses and our symphony orchestras being very well supported in terms of the Western cultural tradition. Very well. They don't seem to be well supported by the general population. It's all hip hop and whatnot. You know, do you understand what I'm saying? But you think for some reason there's an interest in the Chinese cultural tradition and the classical Chinese cultural tradition, or?
Yes, because our production is very unique. It is a classical performance.
Yeah.
But it's very, what I call user-friendly. It's accessible by anyone, whether you're a 9-year-old or an 80-year-old, you're able to appreciate the art form.
Yeah.
It's what I call a cultural banquet. You know, like traditional Chinese banquet has a 10-course meal.
They do 10?
Sometimes 12.
12?
But our show...
Is that dessert? The county dessert too?
Sometimes.
Okay.
But our show has, you know, over a dozen elements or programs.
Yes, that's true.
Dancing, singing, instrumental pieces.
Drums.
And drums. So it's, but all of the performance individually is a classic performance. So anyone can appreciate it, you know, and I've seen 5-year-olds sit through the 2-hour production.
I saw them when I was at the thing with delight in their face.
Yeah.
The little kids. I saw there were some kids sitting
it.
next to me, and they were just excited as circus.
Yeah, we had the
when the dragon came out.
Not only that, we had a show called Lady from the Moon.
Lady from the Moon,
and
yes.
And all the kids were able to appreciate, you know, the story, you know, according to Chinese legend, where the moon came from. Who was the first woman who ever landed on the moon? Yeah,
that's right. I remember that one. Yeah, she was. Yeah, okay. I remember that. I think I remember that bit, or that skit. What do you call it? A scene.
It's a dance drama.
A dance drama. Okay, yeah, that kind of thing is very good. Where else do we have that kind of thing appearing on the stage in the United States of America? We have Broadway, but they mostly do old chestnuts and things, and it's a business and everything. But you seem to have come onto the scene right here in the middle of New York, right in the middle of the holiday season, with this thing that is so culturally uplifting and so forth. What else is there? Are there other things going on similar to what you're doing? Do you look out for other people? Seems to be very unique.
It is. Yeah. It is very unique. I do not see any other similar type of performances around the world.
Now that maybe people who know the theater better. My daughter's in theater and everything, but it's not. It's very venturesome. 66 venues. You're going to the traveling troupe of this show. Did you say?
So far, yes.
66 venues. Okay. Well, this is. Planet Earth is, you know, only so big and everything, but I mean, would that be like maybe, you know, Boston or something, or London, England, or Sydney, Australia? How far afield can you go? And one crucial question, could this be, or will it ever be, able to be shown in Beijing?
We'd like to be invited to go to Beijing.
Any feelers out that way and everything? Now in this Olympic year and everything, maybe you could start appearing in. Would there be objection to
We don't have any objections to going to Beijing.
No, but would they have objection?
I don't know. How do
what
I know?
What do you think? No, I'm just asking you. No, I'm just saying. You're Chinese. You have some feel for it and everything, you know. And it's a big development. China is such a big story in terms of just the news and everything. Now, what's going on? They're building like crazy. Everything's going on and everything. And so, what's the feeling from? What's the word from back home in terms of opening up culturally and that kind of thing, or whatever?
I think that the Chinese people are waiting to see this show. I've heard through my families and my friends that people in China want to see this show.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people trying to even get the DVD or something.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have two friends visiting. They're from Beijing, you know, and one of them is asking me, "Can you get me some DVDs? You know, I want to. It's so beautiful. I want to bring this to Beijing. There will be so many people wanting to see it."
Okay.
So I think Chinese people want to see this production in China.
What about the Chinese government? Would they want the people to see it? And I hear tell there's some censorship going on.
Well, they
censor the Google, they censor the internet, and that kind of thing. And you got a problem with the leader. Like many countries have a problem with the leaders, and then there's the people, and the people are different than the leaders. And you know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. The Chinese Communist regime has never respected what their people's goodwill, what their people want to see or want to have.
They're not very democratic.
They've never. So it's not surprising that they're not giving their people something that they want. So I wouldn't be surprised if the government.
They're not giving the people something that they want. The government.
The communist regime.
There's a lot of people in this country who think our government's not giving us what we want. Did you hear the election with Mr. Obama and Mr. Hillary and everything going now? And the big word in it is now fundamental change. There's a lot of opposition to the system here in America, you understand, that's blowing in the wind.
I guess there's a
Carried by the artists and presented by the artists often.
There's a difference. I think the communist regime in China is not giving its people the very basic right to live in a civilized society. You know, the freedom of speech, freedom to, free access to information, the freedom of enjoying cultural events, freedom of religion, all of that, free flow of information. Those things are all things that's basically taken away from Chinese people. The internet is blocked.
It is.
It is blocked. It's still being censored.
Are you still in touch with people back in China, like letters and family or anything like that? Or do you get a feel for what's going on in China? You're away for a long time here. But have you severed your ties with China? It's a personal question you may not want to answer. But are you in touch with people in China?
I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I saw a program on television the other day. They were talking about Tiananmen Man, the young man that stood up to the tank. Remember, all the world saw that in 1989 in Tiananmen and everything. And they had students in China. You were students in China? Did you go to university there?
I was already here.
You were already here when you went to you too?
I was 3, but my parents had to take me away from Beijing.
You were 3 when you left Beijing?
No, I was 3 during the event you were talking about.
Oh, that.
The guy
but they had this, and everybody in the world knows that young man standing up to a tank, and they had these students, university students in China. They had never seen that photograph. They didn't know who he was. How can they possibly block something as iconic as that to get through to the consciousness of the people? And I thought, can you explain to me how the censorship can be so effective, the mind control? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think to answer that question, we really have to understand communism. Communism, the whole idea of communism is built upon deceit and, manipulation, and, the communism never had any interest of, it's against human nature, it's against human values and the traditional value that every civilized society tries to honor, and my grandmother was a Christian.
Yes. She was Christian. Okay.
She said that she does not like communism. She hates them. She said the worst thing they ever brought to China is they force everyone to lie. The whole regime is built upon deceit and lie. You cannot survive in China if you do not lie. And you have to say things that you yourself don't even believe in. to be in line with the political gain.
Because they have all power.
Exactly.
In a unitary way.
So to answer your question, how could they put such a tight control, on what information is available to people in today's, in today's high-tech, era?
Yeah.
It's because they are, they have the whole, they have their apparatus, built to do that for 50 years, to control the mind, to control all media in China is state-controlled.
Yeah.
The internet have internet police,
yes,
policing the traffic.
And
to see
Yahoo
what's
and
being
Google cooperate in order to
Exactly.
try and tap that huge 1.5 billion market.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's all money. So you got the imperialists. Didn't the communists talk about the imperialists, the opium wars, and the British and the imperialists and everything? And you were fighting against the imperialists are like us. And now the imperialists have got trillions of dollars invested in China and made league with the communists. And Mr. Hu is saying, we're socialists, we're against the imperialists, we're against the bad guys. Do you understand what a contradiction, or how one can try and understand how they can say they're representing communism? Because communism or socialism is for the people rather than just for the bourgeois, right, or for the well-to-do. No?
That's according to their
to
theory.
their. But they see it that way. The so-called progressive community would have, they like Mr. Chavez in Venezuela because he's socialist. He's not in league with the imperialists and the capitalists,
Yeah, there's a book that...
it's confusing, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is very confusing to a lot of Westerners.
I'm a
And
Westerner.
there's one book. There's one book that explains
Tell
what
me
communism
the book.
is.
I'll write it down. What
The book is 9 Commentaries.
Oh, I've read that. Yeah, that's published. Yeah.
Yeah, that book is very thorough in explaining what communism is and what it has done to China.
Yeah, and that's been widely published.
It is.
It's widely published, and there's a lot of people leaving the Communist Party, as I understand, in China. There's a lot of people abandoning the Communist Party. And that 9 Commentaries and the people who talk on it, they think the government that's in such total control, and to which we're so aligned, and our business leaders and our bankers and our are so aligned, and so much investment, and they're talking about China's the new free. We got the Olympics coming, and they're really booming, called growth rate, but they think the Chinese government might fall from power. And they assert this in terms of a way in which there's so much human rights abuse and so inappropriate for the people that it will not be able to stand. That's a very serious kind of development if that were to happen, or do you think it's possible?
I think it's very possible.
You do?
I think so.
And do many people think that?
I think a lot of Chinese people, think it's happening.
It is happening.
Well, the fact that so many people are quitting the Communist Party, I mean...
We have figures on that, don't we?
We have figures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking culture, right? But it can't help but be something. And I mean, do we know how many people are in the Communist Party that Mr. Hu is talking to? How many people are? And that's the power structure. That's the power structure. That's the establishment, right? The Communist Party.
There's supposedly there's a large number, but I wonder how many people within that number really, think that they are Communist Party members in today's China. I can see that probably a lot of these people don't think in their heart that they, agree to the communist ideology.
You think they're just doing it
so
for
it doesn't matter what the
number is. They're just doing it for pragmatic advantage and gain for themselves.
Oftentimes
maybe,
they're forced to join the party, because
Yeah.
I remember growing up in China.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I grew up here, so after reading the books you mentioned, the 9 Commentaries, it was like reading history, because I grew up here, so I didn't really have a sense of what the Communist Party is and what really is going on over there. But I do remember growing up in China when I went to elementary school, they made you do certain things and they made you join the party. Well, when you're young, I believe...
You were very young. You were in China.
I was in China. I went to elementary school. Yeah, they made you wear this red scarf.
Yeah.
That the red always represents blood to me, so I don't really know what it really meant. But I had to wear that every morning when I went to school, and I would always lose it. And my mom would be like, "Where's your red scarf?"
You would lose it on purpose?
No, I don't know. It could have been maybe subconsciously, but I had no idea why I had to wear this thing.
Yeah.
And now thinking back on it, I think it's so ridiculous when when kids grow up, they're forced to grow up in a certain way that I guess the government want you to be. So when you go to school, right now, I think I have one of my cousins in China that there's like questions they ask you, and like in college examination tests about, like, you know, what you think about your country and about communism and things like that, I think is so ridiculous. It has nothing to do with school, but they have to put it in there because they you know, want to control their people, it seems like.
It's indoctrination, and it's a thing that people have political power. Oh, I guess every nation does that. Somehow the French all seem to think that the French way is the best way, and the Germans think the Germans way, and the Americans think the American. You know, every system will, in a certain sense, and it's called patriotism, and it's called national identity, and all these kind of things. People want to have a sense of identity that they're a part of. So every country does that to a degree, don't? Or did you ever see the football teams fighting? We're number one, you know, and the soccer team, and they get into big fights and tear things apart over this thing about we're number one, you know, and they're identifying with a group or with a thing as part of nationalism. And
there's a difference, I would say.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Communism in China, you know, nowadays. China, some people say that China cannot be called socialist anymore because it has open market, you know, people, you know.
I saw him, Mr. Hu, say we're socialism.
However.
How can he say that?
What they're doing now is saying everyone can go out and make money. I don't care how you make money, but it's okay now that you have money. But you cannot think independently. You have to think how I want you to think. You know, you have to agree with me in terms of what's good, what's bad, you know, and everything. So when you take, and humans are human because we have our independent thinking, we have our values. When all of that is taken away from a person, and the person himself is not allowed, is deprived of the right to think, to have his own mind, what are we, you know? So that's the fundamental difference, and that's what communism does to a nation, to an individual. So that's, I think, is really a big tragedy in China.
We get carried away with patriotism. You're too young. I mean, you ladies both are too young, and you wouldn't remember, or maybe not here long, to remember we went, the United States of America, right? Went very far down the line toward, well, or you could go to, say, Hitler's Germany, where they were all in, you know, it's fascism. And we went way down the line with a guy, McCarthy, in the 50s. They had a committee in Congress, the House Un-American Activities Committee. I mean, you probably wouldn't even remember that. But it was serious. They were calling people up and saying, you're being un-American, particularly if you had anything to do with Karl Marx or anything to do with the idea that there should be any other way of organizing society but along capitalist lines, which fit into the Democrat-Republican Party the way we have it here and everything. But they went very far. They had camps built. There were things where they were ready, internal security threat. And countries go a long way down the line to protect the power structure of the people who run the country everywhere, don't they? But you say communism maybe is particularly strong. Nazism was very strong in Hitler Germany.
Well, I'm just very proud of the fact that we're Chinese Americans. We're able to develop this wonderful culture event here in the United States.
Absolutely, no question.
I'm not sure if I could do the same thing in China right now.
Well, that's what I asked you. Do you think they would welcome you? Well, you could come and you could all get up on the stage and then all pass out the 9 commentaries after you put on the show in Beijing. Or if music is universal, so you can do music, if you could do music, Gilbert and Sullivan used to, they would put, or Mozart. Mozart did that when he would put on an opera, and it would have political context, but it was all done in a satirical kind of way, and using music and culture in order to, in a certain sense, poke fun at the heads of the royal heads in Versailles or wherever. You know what I mean? So they can do that.
Well, I think that the show is about Chinese culture. It's about the Chinese traditions.
Right.
As far as who does not like it or who's not in favor of it, that's not something that, you know, we could worry about.
But what I'm looking for this great opening of the festival on the big stage in Beijing. I think that would be great.
I think that day
and
will come.
I heard you even think that maybe actually in the works, some of that kind of thing, it might be possible.
I truly believe in that it will be possible.
Will the people in the outside, you know, the troublemakers outside that are there and everything, will they be able to pass out copies of 9 commentaries and Epic Times? You understand? You know, that would be really good, wouldn't it, if they could? That would be, but they seem to be. if you think that it's really possible that that power structure is going to fall from power, that's a huge thing, and it seems to me it's a huge assumption in terms of the organization of the planet and so forth. A lot of people think the power structure here is going to be challenged fundamentally. That we live in a time where we can capture the cultural traditions and so on. But we're a time of qualitative change. Do you think we're at a period of real change in the planet and so forth? I mean, qualitative, fundamental change is blowing in the wind? Or how do you feel generally about the human? Are you positive or optimistic about the human condition and the prospects for the human condition?
I think the world is a very is a complex place right now,
That's
politically,
mildly,
geographically, economically, culturally, socially, and there, you know. However, I think what can bring people together is the basic human values that everyone cherishes, and I still believe that nothing can be more effective and more powerful than bringing people together through dancing, singing, and cultural events.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
I think I do too.
Yeah.
I think the arts are really important, and the arts are often I think it was who was it? Pond, I think he said, the poet. The artists are the antenna of the race, because the artists pick up on things earlier than the normal society, much less the politicals. They pick it up first in terms of things that are going on, right?
And that's what we try to do. We try to give our audience a performance that's, you know, purely beautiful, and it's all about something wonderful, something good, something to make them happy, and something, you know, that's uplifting, you know, enlightening, and that's what we try to do. And we got a lot of feedback from our audience, you know.
You got a lot of feedback from me. I did. I gave them all kinds of kudos. You know, I think it's a marvelous show. It's uniquely so. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people say that it touches their heart because they feel that there's a certain because Chinese culture is deeply rooted in the divine culture. You know, China is called the land of the divine, so.
It is land of the divine.
People could feel the spirituality that's deeply rooted in Chinese culture, and that's what touches them.
Yeah. Well, now that could be a thing that you would bring up. James Joyce said, history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. That might not be the right metaphor or something, but when you're touching into the Lao Tzu, and then you've got like things like Qigong, and then you've got things where, you know, the system of philosophy, Qi, or the idea of Qi, or the idea like the Vedic prana. These are philosophies that have meaning in terms of human purpose, a healing, very much a part of a medical thing, but it's also got meaning in terms of spiritual values of what the world is about and so forth. And people who have a modernist view are not wanting to have any of that brought up because it would be subversive to their new world that they think they've created. And so they've got, it's like a religion. In this case, it might be, in your case, it was with Hitler, it was like a religion. The people were just taking one. In China, it was like it was like a religion, the Marxism, right? But it seems not to be, and they don't want to have anything that has to do with anything from the past, as I understand. Maybe I'm off base. But aren't they putting these kind of shows on? Are they putting the kind of shows on that show the classical tradition of China, and rather than just people with red flags and stuff? In Beijing and in China, are they putting on, tapping into the rich cultural tradition, or do they eschew that?
They are, on the surface, rebuilding temples or restoring some of the cultural relics in China. However, they're not putting back, it's impossible for them to put back the inner meaning behind those temples, behind those cultural relics.
Yeah.
You know, for example, you know, they're building these temples, but they're not really telling people the meaning of the scriptures, which is the essence of Buddhism, you know. And so what's the use for people to go to temples without really knowing what the temple means, what the teachings, and what Buddhism teachings were? You know, same thing for Christianity. I mean, they have what they call patriotic churches in China, and then the clergymen, you know, take salaries.
They bow down to Karl Marx?
Exactly. A lot of them, you know, I mean, they take salaries from the government. But do they really let people, you know, believe in, you know, the teachings of you know, Christian religion.
Christian or Buddhist or Lao
right,
Tzu,
so
Lao Tzu or Confucian or...
Right, so you have to, pledge allegiance to the government, to communism first, before you could go to the church.
That's the new religion.
That's exactly.
It's like an inquisition.
So you
like an inquisition where they're going to they got a religion. They don't want to hear anything else from anything else.
Right. So you may go to Beijing or go to Shanghai to see this, culture show, quote unquote culture show, but it's just all the things on the surface. There's no inner meaning. There's no cultural relevance.
You think they see some of these cultural traditions or the evoking of cultural traditions, even on into cultural shows or theater or something, as subversive to their ideology or their quasi-secular religious view of the world? Remember, Marx said opium, I said it before, but Marx said all religions or spiritual traditions are opium of the people, and everything can be seen through a dialectical materialistic interpretation of history, which you probably heard in your school days, right?
Well, actually, I was just watching a dance competition, national dance competition from China. The dance movements and techniques were very well put together.
Okay.
But as soon as the curtain opens, all you see is red. I'm serious.
Like
you think
scarf.
it's a joke, but it's not a joke. Red lights shine on the dancers, and there's nothing behind them, and their costumes are beautiful, but you don't see anything because the red lights just shines on all of the dancers, and it's just, compared to our show, I think that it's such a great show for us, or such a good opportunity for us to do this, because you can really see the purity of the Chinese people.
But is it starting to creep in? I mean, it seems to me, if I may, in China, I have no contact, because it's such a tradition. You would think like a blade of grass coming up through cement, the rich cultural tradition would grow, even though it had been suppressed, for political purpose and everything. Is it starting to be where because you're growing, there's a lot of money over there now, it's growing and it's bound, and you got a middle class coming and that kind of stuff. So they're not having theater that is just appearing with authentic interpretation of the rich cultural tradition, or is that still thought of by the powers that be as subversive of their religion, which is this Marxist, socialist supposed power base that they have?
Well, the dance competition I was talking about, besides the red lights, the music that played were communist songs. Of course, they didn't have the lyrics on, but the tune is, my mom was like, why are they playing that song for a dance like that, For me, of course, I wouldn't know, because I had grown up here, so I didn't really know much of the songs and teachings of the Communist Party, but my mom realized it, and she was like, that's kind of funny how they have that song playing in the back when they're trying to do a folk Chinese dance,
Right.
So
the cultural traditions are there. Well, the show is really good and everything, and I'm glad you're putting it on. I am just trying to see through it. I'm very happy for New Tung Dynasty. Talk a little. We didn't get a show. We had a clip we couldn't show. We had a problem technical. But talk about New Tung Dynasty Television. It's a major television movement. And tell me just some of the dimensions of it, when it got started, how far are you reaching? Is any programming going into China now?
Yes, we are.
And talk to that, please.
Okay, NTD TV was established 5 years ago. Right
Only?
We've been around for a little more than 5 years.
That's not hardly any time.
Yes, we're now broadcasting 24/7 globally. We're on 4 satellites covering from North America, America, Asia, Europe, and also Australia.
Okay.
So so we cover the entire world.
Okay, and then they download to what? Who carries it when you download from the satellite? And what's the distribution like?
The number of people?
Yeah, how many? Is that through broadcast facilities or?
It's through satellite. The number of people who could see our program is in the hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions?
Millions, yes.
Okay.
And I think a lot of them are in China or in Asia. We have received letters from people, from peasants living in rural China, who wrote to us and saying that I'm trying to save money to buy a satellite dish for my entire village.
Can they get a satellite dish in China?
Of course
they're not forbidden?
Well,
it's just a matter of money? Would they?
How is the government going to find out who has a satellite dish in a rural village?
How about driving around with a truck and seeing the satellite dish on the house? Or making it like 1984 or a real police state? I don't know how strong the police state apparatus is. but they had Gestapo and whatnot in Nazi Germany.
Satellite dishes, from what I understand, are allowed in China. It's just they're controlled. They want to control what type of satellite dishes you can have.
They managed to control the internet, haven't they?
This is what I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people in China are watching our program, and they do send us feedback, and then and I think what people find out that this is an alternative source for information, because people are tired of watching the state-controlled media.
If you have television in China, how many, and you turn here in Beijing, or let's say in a city, and then compare with the countryside, if you have television in your house, how many channels are there? Is it all state-controlled in that?
I don't know how many channels they could watch. I'm not familiar with that. But I know fairly, if people have the satellite dish that could receive our signal, then they should be able to watch our program.
Is that like on DirecTV, or is that just, okay, yeah. How big a dish do you need now? It used to be you had to have a 3-meter dish to get satellite delivery, you know, back in the old days when I was looking into those things. But how small a dish can they do it on, and who does the distribution? You all do it.
Over here we have companies that handles the distribution for us. In China, I'm not sure, but I think people are on their own getting their satellite dish. How they're getting their satellite dish, I'm not sure.
And the programming you have, you do news, variety?
We have news, sports program. We have, you know, we have teaching English program. We have drama. We have basically every type of TV program.
What they call telenovelas, like they call that in South America, like soap operas.
Soap opera.
You have those kind of things.
We have those. Yep.
Things, and it is geared to the numbers. How many people you can have watch. You want to have as many people watch as you can, so you keep it at a popular level if you can. Yeah. Do you have commentaries? We mentioned Epic Times and 9 commentaries as a book that's written about it. Do you have, apart from just reporting the news as what, when, where, and how, and so forth, do you have people who make commentaries?
Yes.
And maybe would refer to nine commentaries on communism and that, or have editorial?
We have talk shows. We have several talk shows. We also have business programs. We have business talk shows. We also have English programs now. So there are a lot of people in China who love to see watch English TV, and they find our English programs very, very interesting.
Where do you do the production mostly? In New York or where?
The New York
Your studios and things.
Our studios, our headquarters is in New York City.
Right.
We also have over 40, I don't remember the exact numbers now, I think over 40 news bureaus around the world.
Wow, that's really good.
People covering local news, community news in the Chinese communities.
Linked into New Tung Dynasty.
Yes.
Okay, that's a major outreach.
It is.
That's more than your networks have. And those are bureaus?
These are bureaus in local cities and...
Local origination? They can originate programming and then get it back?
Yep, and then...
It's a major development in terms of communication. What would you compare it to? And you don't compare it to NBC or one of the networks or something like that. Where would you compare? Where would it fit? Rupert Murdoch's notion, or he's got huge outreach and that kind of thing. Where would it fit in terms of the established players in communication after only 5 years, would you say?
We've never